the crew has seen on the moon's surface. Down on the right is Artemis Mission Control here in Houston. Those two rooms down at the bottom are just down the hall from each other. And we are just a few minutes away from the next cabin and window team swap. That means Victor and Christina, who have been at the windows, will fly to the cabin, the background essentially, and be their support crew for Reed and Jeremy. Reed and Jeremy will move back up to the windows. Continuing their discussion portion of the flyby in the lunar targeting package, where it says far side albedo/color. They are looking, science team, looking to get an understanding of what the crew can see on the far side at this point, and its brightness as well as any colors. We did hear earlier, Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen reporting that they could even see browns and even greens on. Another rundown of just time during which the crew is of the third soon. Over the window to help prevent any reflections from inside the spacecraft. They are also using an 80 to 400 millimeter zoom lens. And the other astronaut on the window team will be in window 3 using their portable computing device to make annotations. Now, again, both of those crew members are making audio recordings of what they are seeing, and we are not hearing that right now. Those are going to be downlinked later.
Integrity Houston, it is time for another swap between the cabin and the window team. So we have 15 minutes of handover time, and then we will expect Jeremy and Reed in the windows, and Christina and Victor at the cabin. I have no new vehicle updates for you, but I do have a photo location for the photos.
Bienvenidos, estamos en el cuarto de San Alejo. Estamos iniciando nuestra transmisión en vivo y en directo del sobrevuelo de la nave Orion sobre la superficie lunar. En este momento tenemos en pantalla las imágenes que están transmitiendo desde la nave Orion. Recuerden que esta es la misión Artemis 2, que lleva a 4 astronautas a sobrevolar la Luna, dar una vuelta por la parte oscura de la Luna y volver a la Tierra. De fondo estamos escuchando las transmisiones que hay entre la base de Houston y la nave Orion con sus tripulantes que están dando informes de lo que van avanzando y van viendo de la superficie lunar.
Alright, that's no problem, and it's unrelated to flyby. Alright, that's no problem, and it's unrelated to flyby.
En este momento informan en la estación de la NASA que los últimos informes que han hecho los astronautas han sido pues que están acomodados en las ventanillas tomando fotos a la superficie lunar, se están acercando ya a la parte más cercana que van a estar a la luna, están tomando fotografías, tuvieron que tapar una de las ventanillas porque el reflejo de la Tierra les daba mucha luz. Entonces han estado acomodándose para tomar fotos con sus cámaras y aparte pues las cámaras que van integradas en la nave Orion. En este momento la NASA anuncia que en algunos minutos darán un nuevo informe, una nueva comunicación en directo con los astronautas. Estaremos pendientes de eso.
Will be huge compared to the sun. Whereas if you're standing on Earth and looking at a solar eclipse, the moon and the sun appear to be about the same size in the sky. As the moon begins to cover and then uncover the sun, the astronauts will see a partial solar eclipse, so that's before and after totality, and during that time frame they will have to wear eclipse glasses so they can safely view this phase. They also intend to capture images of the sun's corona during the eclipse. This is a rare glimpse at the innermost corona that will only be captured by the astronauts' cameras. During the eclipse, we also look forward to the crew members describing what they will see, which includes unique light features like the shape and size of the corona and potentially even lunar dust. At the same time, Venus, Saturn, Mars, and Mercury will be near the sun, so they may be able to identify what part of the sky they're looking at. This can help train future Artemis astronauts on what part of the sky they're seeing, which is useful knowledge in challenging situations when they may need to rely on that information instead of instruments for navigation and orientation. That eclipse window will last about an hour, and it'll happen near the end of the day today, closer to 7:35 p.m. Central, 8:35 Eastern.
Sigue evolucionando el avance de la nave Orión acercándose a la Luna. Todos los amantes de los temas de astronomía, de ovnis, de fenómenos paranormales, están muy atentos a qué se puede observar sobre la superficie lunar. Recordemos que ha habido una gran cantidad de videos que muestran actividad de origen extraterrestre sobre la superficie lunar, y esperamos que en cualquier momento podamos ver algún avistamiento ovni o algo fuera de lo común a medida que la nave Orión se va acercando a la Luna.
As you can see in this live view from Orion, the spacecraft is maneuvering around. Side is now very far to the right side of your screen. This is the side that we can see from Earth. That darkened portion are ancient lava flows.
En este momento pues por las tres está mostrando la misma imagen. Pero
the crater down towards the bottom of the moon is Oriental, and this is a crater that was previously never seen before by human eyes until this mission.
Mostrando algún otro tipo de información. Por ahora, en este momento, están en las 3. Están transmitiendo el mismo.
Everything to the left of Oriental is considered the far side. And this is what we typically do not see from Earth. Just a reminder about this view, this is coming from a GoPro camera mounted on the tip of one of Orion's 4 solar arrays. Each solar array has a camera mounted on it, and the bandwidth is limited due to we have a crew on board, and this is our first flight of crew aboard the Orion spacecraft. So having a crew means we have to have an environmental control and life support system. There's a lot of data around, a lot of data to bring down for the crew members to keep us up to date on everything happening aboard the spacecraft. So we have to share our bandwidth when it comes to imagery and data. Inside the Orion spacecraft, the astronauts have completed their cabin and window team swap, meaning we have moved into the next block of lunar flyby observations. Jeremy Hansen and Reed Wiseman are now back at the windows, taking photos and making annotations. About halfway through this block, they will switch positions at the windows and will be prompted by the ground to do so.
La explicación que da en este momento la transmisión de la NASA dice que la parte que vemos a la derecha, más iluminada de la superficie lunar, es la parte que es más visible desde la Tierra. Esa es la cara que se ve desde la Tierra. Esto significa que la nave no está ya en este momento en una posición que esté entre la Tierra y la Luna, sino que está a un lado. Ya empezamos a ver el lado oscuro de la Luna, pero desde la Tierra se debe ver una luna llena, porque lo van a ver de frente a la parte brillante. Entonces están indicando el informe de la NASA de que esta parte derecha más brillante que vemos en pantalla es la que es visible desde la superficie de la Tierra.
and we identified some really unique texture areas as well. At one point, towards the end of the images of my time in window 3, I just had an overwhelming sense of being moved by looking at the moon. It lasted just a second or two, and I actually couldn't even make it happen again. But something just threw me in suddenly to the lunar landscape. It became real. And the truth is, the moon really is its own body in the universe. It's not just a poster in the sky that goes by. It is a real place. And when we have that perspective and we compare it to our home of the Earth, it just reminds us how much we have in common. Everything we need, the Earth provides, and that in and of itself is somewhat of a miracle, and one that you can't truly know until you've had the perspective of the other. I'll switch into some logistics stuff. The Peltors, both their batteries stopped providing the active listening, but we have verified they are still recording, and so we are able to have discussion time and hear outside our recordings by just moving the ear cup off of the ear. Other than that, everything's working well technically, and we've been able to find all our targets, and we're having a really great time.
Thanks, Christina. We copy those logistics for the Peltors, and also thanks for bringing us into the cabin with you with that description.
Right on time, NASA astronaut Christina Cook, a mission specialist for Artemis 2, calling down a science a situation report. Good news, reporting that she and her teammates have been able to capture all targets that were listed. Christina also gave a vibrant description of just how it feels to be there and to see the moon up close and not just something passing in our night sky. Currently, the team members at the
cámara con un lente de 80 milímetros.
Meanwhile, Integrity cabin team for window shroud.
Y que están notando detalles que nunca antes habían visto sobre la superficie y tomando fotos para documentar todos estos hallazgos sobre la superficie. Están hablando de algunos de los cráteres más importantes que logran ver. Recordamos que hay un mapa de la Luna donde todos estos cráteres ya tienen su nombre. Y dicen que están tratando de localizar todos los cráteres que están dentro del mapa de la superficie lunar y para ir actualizando si ven algo diferente al mapa original que ellos tienen, que en este momento ellos están observando el mapa que, digamos, oficial que tiene la NASA de la superficie lunar y lo están comparando con lo que están viendo en este momento ellos allá en vivo en directo. Como vemos en la imagen, cada vez es más nítido lo que se ve ya de los cráteres, o sea, se sigue acercando la nave hacia la Luna. Continúa la astronauta Christina Cook diciéndonos que está asombrada con lo que están viendo y están alistándose para poder empezar a buscar tomas hacia el lado oculto de la luna.
We will also offer that airflow on the window would be helpful. So if you want, you can also retrieve the condensation hose, which should be friction fit onto one of the diffusers.
Por último, en su informe dice que el checklist, la lista de objetivos que tenían para fotografiar y para analizar, todos fueron cumplidos, que hasta el momento todo lo que se han propuesto dentro de la lista de tareas de la misión los han logrado cumplir totalmente.
Okay, we'll take that, Victor. Thank you. Please keep us updated.
Bueno, todos nos gustaría que dejaran ver la transmisión desde adentro, pero realmente la NASA, por razones que ya todos conocemos, censura mucho estas transmisiones. Entonces, primero, siempre hay un desfase en el tiempo de que se están transmitiendo y el tiempo en que nosotros lo podemos ver. Y por ahora no han vuelto a hacer transmisiones desde dentro de la nave Orion. Vamos a esperar a ver si de pronto en el transcurso de los siguientes minutos podemos llegar a ver otro tipo de imagen diferente a la de la cámara que tiene, o sea, esta cámara que estamos viendo, que lo voy a poner más grande. Esta cámara está montada en uno de los paneles solares de la nave Orion. Pero estamos esperando pues que hubiera una transmisión desde la parte interior de la nave. En este momento habla uno de los astronautas diciendo de que han tenido que poner el protector en las ventanas, porque al irse acercando hacia la luna están más de frente a la línea de luz del sol. Entonces que está brillándoles mucho por la ventana, y el reflejo de la Tierra también tiene un gran incremento en la luminosidad que entra en la nave. Entonces han tenido que utilizar protectores en las ventanas. Siguen indicando los problemas que han tenido por el exceso de luz que están recibiendo por la ventana, y están buscando cómo acomodarse de la mejor forma para poder seguir tomando fotografías sin que se vean afectados por la luz que les están dando directamente. Como vemos en pantalla, el que está hablando en este momento es el astronauta Victor Glover, que es el que nos está contando en este momento de la situación actual. Dice que algunas de las vistas están viéndose interrumpidas por la gran luminosidad que están teniendo en este momento, que han tenido que utilizar protectores oculares para poder asomarse a las ventanas.
Victor, thank you. You got a cheer from science there, and we all just went on that moonwalk with you, so highlighting how important it is to talk about these things. I also want to let you know that we have Diana Glover with us in the viewing gallery.
Control de misión les está pidiendo que por favor quiten que quiten el protector de la ventana 4 que habían puesto para evitar la entrada de la luz solar y la pasen para otra ventana que está afectándoles la luz a ellos. Digamos que en este momento su principal preocupación es el exceso de luz que están recibiendo por las ventanas. Control de misión le agradece al astronauta Víctor por su informe y están esperando algunos informes adicionales que dé la astronauta Cristina, que es la que está encargada en este momento de tomar las fotografías y que se encuentra en la ventana número 2 de la nave Orion. En este momento el nuevo informe de la astronauta Cristina es que ya está enviando las imágenes de la cámara con zoom de 80 milímetros. Bueno, continuamos en el acercamiento a la superficie lunar. Vamos a ya llegando al punto más cercano que van a tener. Recuerden que no hay alunizaje, no hay un sobrevuelo a baja altura, sino que se van a mantener a cierta distancia. Y lo que se basa principalmente la misión es observación y las pruebas de control de la nave para ver cómo funciona la nave en ese ambiente ya cuando están cerca a la luna.
Continued to lose views of the near side. It is just barely visible over towards the bottom right side of your screen. And then you'll also hear later about that terminator. That's the line between light and darkness while on the moon. It is really exposing some of those craters at this time. A couple of the other features in view right now are Hertzsprung Basin and Vavilov Crater. Hertzsprung Basin is nearer to the center of the moon, closer to that terminator line right now. And Vavilov Crater is just on the outskirts of it, closer again to the terminator. Towards the bottom of the moon and to the left of the terminator line, or currently shadowed in darkness, is Apollo Basin.
Bueno, atención que ya tenemos una nueva ya imagen dentro de la nave. Se ve oscuro porque, como hablamos anteriormente, tuvieron que tapar las ventanas para poder realizar las tomas fotográficas porque tenían exceso de luz por el reflejo de la tierra y luz solar que entraba. No nos mostraron más. Nos tienen esperando a ver que podamos ver algo más de la tripulación. Hablan del tiempo, el tiempo estimado para llegar al punto más lejano de la Tierra, que será unos 405.000 kilómetros, que será ya cuando se llegue al punto más lejano por el lado de la cara oculta de la Luna. Esto ocurrirá en 1 hora y 36 minutos. En 1 hora y 36 minutos ya la nave estará en la parte oscura de la Luna, o sea, por detrás de la Luna, desde donde nosotros la vemos desde la Tierra, y ahí es donde estaremos ya perdiendo toda comunicación con la nave y volver a la comunicación cuando retornen a quedar por el otro lado de la Luna y ingresen a la ruta de regreso.
Great description, Victor. Thanks, and really interesting to hear now the distinction between shadow and color. Before I let you go back to other observations, you mentioned that Reed saw a browner hue to the annular ring than the rest of Oriental. Are you seeing that from your vantage point?
window, there's like a thermocouple right here in the center of the window, and it is the orange Kapton tape color, and so it is unfortunately it's like trying to look at stars, next to a metropolis. I think it's drowning out any color that I could pick up from the moon. I am not able to see that color, but I have not looked at it through one of the from one of the windows 1 through 4. I think when I get away from this Kapton tape strip that I would be able to see the variation that Reed's talking about.
That is great feedback operationally. Thanks, Victor. I'll leave you to it.
Science integrity with a question from the window team.
Integrity, this is Science here with you.
Yes, they have a question to help inform a theory that they're sort of tossing back and forth. What is older, the Mare seas of the near side or Oriental?
Stand by, Integrity. We're going to get you a little geologic history here. Integrity Science back with you for some lunar volcanism when you're ready.
Go ahead.
You're making our day down here getting to talk about lunar volcanoes. Oriental, as far as Mare go, is younger than almost all of the Mare on the near side. The exception are features like Aristarchus, which really pop out to you guys and really pop out to us here on Earth. That is younger, but other than that, Oriental is pretty young as far as Mare go.
And Kelsey, thanks for that. We love lunar volcanism too. How about when the actual crater was formed?
Christina, can you, maybe you've heard the window team talk about the sort of contacts around Oriental, but because that material is so much younger, if anything pops out to you about physical relationship between that and surrounding terrain, we'd love to hear it.
that could explain some of the color that they're seeing in certain areas. And so it was really about the ejecta of the creation of the basin and understanding the superposition of its ejecta and mare on the near side or other features. So thank you. We'll take the insight when you have it.
Thank you, Integrity. And I know Jenny wants to get to you with some topics, so I'll leave you with Oriental is 3.8 billion years old.
Copy that. So that's on the older side. The actual basin is very old.
Correct, as is the case with a lot of mare. Typically the big basin formed and then the volcanic eruption was able to punch through the crust where it was weakened by that basin formation.
Perfect. Tracking. Thank you.
NASA astronaut Christina Cook calling down some questions to the science team on console. The voice you're hearing with those answers is Dr. Kelsey Young. She is joined by Trevor Graff on console today. Christina asking about the age of Oriental and specifically the mare regions. Those are those dark regions that you see. They are paved or filled by volcanic deposits.
Better answer.
Integrity, it's about time for a position swap at the window. So we will ask Reed and Jeremy to swap positions. And I'll remind you again about your SD cards. And Victor or Christina, I have one window task for the cabin team when you're ready.
They are swapping and I'm ready.
All right, Tina, we found a way that we can reinstall the shroud on the window. We understand it's pretty darn bright compared to everything that you're looking at. So in order to reinstall it, we will ask that you retrieve the condensation hose and you install it on a friction fit on the cabin air outlet port. That's right by one of your diffusers. You're going to point that little condensation hose such that the air is flowing over the window pane. Let me know when you're ready for the stowage location.
Ready.
Christina, the hose is in locker A1.
The crew has gotten a go to reinstall that window shroud they were using to block some of the earth shine.
Copy.
This view coming from inside the Orion spacecraft as the crew members are swapping windows, specifically Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen. They've been our crew members at the windows taking photos, making annotations, and making recordings that'll be downlinked later to the science team for review. The science team will have a conference tomorrow morning with the crew to get any fresh perspectives or things that they learned during the flyby. Again, we are now in the third of 5 observation blocks for the crew scheduled for today. During this flyby, Orion is passing around between 4,000 and 6,000 miles from the moon and providing the crew with a full view of the lunar surface. It's a higher vantage point and much farther than Apollo's lunar orbits on average. So from this view, astronauts can observe both the North and South Pole and large-scale geologic features in one single view. We are now just under an hour until Orion passes behind the moon, and we lose communication with the crew. They will be out of reach with any of our deep space network antennas. That loss of signal will last about 40 minutes, and we expect to regain communications with them once they fly behind the other side of the moon. While they are behind the moon, they will also reach their max Earth altitude as well as their closest approach to the lunar surface. The view you have right now is a live stream from a camera on Orion's solar arrays. You are looking at a live view of the moon, and 4 people are inside that spacecraft taking pictures of it, telling us everything that they are seeing. The first humans to do so in over 50 years. They'll be sending those pictures down for all of us to enjoy, and of course, especially the science team, who are very excited for what they are learning today. It appears the Artemis II spacecraft, Orion, is now under 5,000 miles away from the moon. Again, we expect their closest distance to the moon be about 4,066 miles. That is an estimate at this point, and we will make sure to share that closest approach distance once we receive it.
Houston integrity question, did you just want us to cool the window with the condensation hose, or did you want us to put the shroud back on and cool the window at the same time?
Victor, we definitely want you to cool down the window with the condensation hose. It's crew preference whether you put the shroud back on. The hose will allow you to do that if it helps with your lunar flyby.
Okay, copy. We're going to do both at the same time. Thank you.
Houston copies.
Houston, thank you for that suggestion. The cabin is darkened again, and that makes a big difference for the imagery. And for science, we are now seeing a half moon.
Thank you, Victor. We're happy to hear it, and we see half moon, full moon joy still.
reporting from Orion that they are seeing half the moon, which is about what it looks like here from this view from the spacecraft. However, what has become a little bit of a catchphrase for this mission, everyone is reporting full moon joy. We are keeping up with which targets the crew is tracking through their lunar targeting package. They are just wrapping up their second.
Science integrity, another observation the window team commented on and Christina and I discussed a bit is in Hertzsprung. The solid and intact crater is very smooth. If it were a dirt road, it's very hard packed, and then you go outside of it, and that outer crater, that's the one that is older. It is a little rougher and more jagged, and starts to get into more loose-looking terrain, and the smooth interior also causes the craters that are inside of the larger crater, the smaller craters, to have really sharp edges, sharp, distinct edges. And just a general comment on that area, Hertzsprung, that whole area, the average albedo there is darker. That is, I would say, 3. And the average albedo around Oriental and between Oriental and Ohm, excluding the wedge, the darker wedge, is more on the 6-7. And that they also seem to be different texturally. Christina described it earlier around Hertzsprung, and then from Hertzsprung toward Oriental, there appears to be a frozen, a rippling pond, but frozen, or like choppy waves when it's windy out, choppy water, and then it freezes instantly. That's the texture. If you walk down there barefoot, it looks like it would be hard on your feet, like lava. After it's cooled, it would be pokey. Except for right there in the center of Hertzsprung, it looks paved, like a paved road, nice and smooth.
Victor, that's a wonderful description. Going from a paved road to lava reminds us of the Icelandic highlands. Thanks for that.
In science, another in the interior of the very intact, the interior of the intact crater at Hertzsprung is albedo variation. I think I heard one of the window crew maybe say color variation, but definitely albedo variation. There's lighter patches and slightly darker patches. It's not swirling, it's just patchy. It just has spots that are lighter, and I would say a predominantly darker average area.
Great descriptions, Victor. Thanks. Not swirly, just patchy is really helpful for us.
Really great descriptions coming from
Science. The window team is hitting all the targets. They are on plan and starting the discussion of the Terminator. And boy, I am loving the Terminator. I think I know it's not purely a moon feature, but what it does to the features of the moon, to the terrain, I've probably spent the most time describing into my recordings and thinking about and looking at the Terminator. There's just so much magic in the Terminator. The islands of light, the valleys, what look like black holes. You'd fall straight to the center of the moon if you stepped in some of those. It's just so visually captivating that the Terminator is the most striking thing that I've seen so far.
We've been loving your evocative descriptions, Victor. You really are bringing us along with you, and we're following along with visualizations that pale in comparison to your descriptions. Thanks. Integrity Science, one more question on a status of what the window team chose to observe for crew choice.
Window 2 talked about Vavilov, looked for suspended dust, and the Terminator. And window 3 about the experience and about the three-dimensionality of the moon this close.
Wonderful,
and
thanks,
another
Victor.
observation about Oriental, I would say, is the features going off to the southwest, the two large, almost look like scratches in the surface. I don't know if they're rays or canyons or collapsed lava tubes, but two distinct features that are almost parallel going off southwest from Oriental Basin. They are the first things that made me notice parallax of our trajectory looking out at Oriental. That and in the inner walls of the east side of the crater rings, you really get a sense that we're flying over something with elevation and terrain, and they look different from this orientation.
Love to hear it, Victor, and you had it that those chains are actually crater rays, secondary craters formed from the formation of Oriental.
Yeah, speaking of crater rays, the crater rays that are going off to the northwest, that run off toward Hertzsprung and I believe toward Vavilov. I'm not looking at it right now, but those crater rays are very interesting. They're all very small. I know you've imaged this, but they're all small, and they look like, you know, a big impact launched rocks and things that made smaller impacts down the way. But something very interesting, and again, you can see this in imagery, but some of them are parallel, and then some of them converge toward the center of Oriental. And then I think I even saw some that maybe diverge, which not diverge, but that are convergent, which indicate multiple large impacts that created a lot of secondary impact crater rays.
Fantastic, Victor, and I'll note that we can infer that you're looking down at your freshly named Integrity crater, which is near the end of one of those beautiful crater rays from Oriental. Thanks for the description.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Integrity is easily identifiable with the naked eye from this point.
We've been hearing some great situation reports from Victor Glover, the pilot of the Artemis II mission, calling down to the science team, letting them know what he is seeing. And one of those things is Hertzsprung Basin. If you look just to the right of the Terminator, that is the difference between light and darkness on the moon. You can see what he's describing when he says Hertzsprung Basin and how it looks a little bit paved in the middle there. It's almost in the very center of the moon in this view, coming from the Orion spacecraft and a camera mounted on its solar array. We are now 4 days, 23 hours, and 23 minutes into the flight of Artemis 2, and we are standing by for their lunar loss of signal in about 43 minutes. Again, the spacecraft will fly behind the moon, and during that time, we won't have communication with them. They will be out of reach of our deep space network. However, we will regain communication with them approximately 40 minutes later when they come around the other side of the moon. The crew aboard the spacecraft are currently discussing the Terminator, that difference between day and night. The science team is interested in learning about the topography and the color of the lunar surface, and it's already been very interesting to hear that they have seen colors like greens and browns while looking at the moon. Some of the questions that they are hoping the crew will discuss are how do the quantities and sizes of craters and mountains vary along the Terminator, and they are looking for the crew to describe the topography of features along or near the Terminator. They're also looking for more information on any color or tone variations, and they're hoping that the crew will take images to illustrate their findings. Glover reported earlier that the crew has missed none of their targets when they are photographing at the window. We aren't hearing the conversations that the crew is having right now, but these are being recorded to their personal computer devices, PCDs, and those will be sent down to the science team. The science team will have a conference with the crew tomorrow morning to discuss their findings and experience when looking at the moon today. We have a few minutes left while the crew is discussing the Terminator. And if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of the moon, our moon, from the Orion spacecraft and a camera on its solar array. Inside that spacecraft, 4 astronauts, Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen, the first 4 people to fly around the moon in over 50 years. This is our lunar flyby day, and the crew has already surpassed one record today. The crew passed the Apollo 13 distance record at 12:57 p.m. Central, 1:57 p.m. Eastern. Canadian Space Agency astronaut Jeremy Hansen calling down that he hopes it's a record soon broken by other explorers. We are live in Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas, monitoring the flight of Artemis 2. All of the flight controllers here, each monitoring a different system aboard the Orion spacecraft.
Integrity Houston, we are ready for our cabin and window teams to swap again. We have a 15-minute handover time here, and I have a couple of items I want to read up to you. They'll require you to write something down on your knee boards, so let me know when you're ready. Copy integrity. First of all, once you start this next shift here, during this lunar observation shift, we will begin our lunar LOS, so you can expect a call from me a few minutes prior reminding you. And second of all, FIDO just sent us updated altitudes and METs for lunar closest approach and max Earth altitude. Let me know when you are ready to write those down. They differ slightly from Optimus.
Thanks, Jenny. We are ready to copy.
Lunar closest approach will be at MET 5 days, 0 hours, 25 minutes, 34 seconds. And the altitude will be 4,067 statute miles. Maximum Earth altitude will be at MET 5 days, 0 hours, 27 minutes, 39 seconds, with an altitude of 252,756 statute miles.
The crew really wants to ask for that in kilometers and in parsecs, but thank you for those. That is great. Thanks for that update.
I'll send FIDO to work, and I appreciate the metric. Other than that, I have no new vehicle statuses to pass to you. Enjoy your handover time, and we're looking forward to picking back up with you shortly.
All right, we'll talk to you shortly.
Those words called from Capcom Jenny Gibbons, CSA astronaut and Artemis II backup crew member, to the crew working aboard the Orion spacecraft. Had a little bit of a view inside the cabin. As you can see, it is very dark. The crew has turned off the lights, and the light that you were able to see is coming through the window, a reflection of Earthshine and from the moon. The crew is moving into their next observation block, meaning they are taking time to switch cabin and window teams. We've had Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen at the windows taking pictures and making annotations and recording some audio files that will be downlinked later to the science team. Meanwhile, Victor Glover and Christina Cook were in the background serving as support. They were also timelined to enjoy a little bit of their midday meal. Now that we are swapping positions, the support team becomes Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen. They will be in the background helping with SD card swaps, as well as providing those situational reports to the science team. Victor Glover and Christina Cook will be the astronauts at the window, photographing and speaking into those PCDs, portable computing devices, about what they're seeing on the moon. As you heard Capcom Jenny Gibbons call to the crew, this block is also when we will lose communications with the crew. That LOS, or loss of signal, scheduled to be less than 35 minutes from now. We anticipate to be out of signal with them for about 40 minutes, and will regain that communication once they've flown around the other side of the moon. Now, even the crew even though the crew will be flying behind the moon, their observation period does not stop. They will still be taking pictures and making annotations of what they are seeing. They'll be looking for the limb of the moon, Earth set, and then Vavilov crater, which we have previously seen. They'll swap positions at the window before moving into a crew choice option. They will get to pick things that are interesting to them on the surface, take pictures, and explain why they find them that way. They'll also be looking for any impact flashes. These are short-lived flashes on the lunar surface caused by impact bombardment. Just before Earthrise, the crew will be looking for lofted lunar dust. This may be lofted just above the lunar surface, and we could only see it just before Earthrise along the dark western limb. Any Earthshine would illuminate potential lofted dust. But once the crew is all the way around the Earth, the brightness of the Earth will wash out any of that dust they might be able to see. These were based on observations from Apollo missions and orbital spacecraft, and so we're very interested to see if the crew might be able to capture some of that lunar dust today. Following that lofted lunar dust target, the next will be Earthrise. We will regain communications with the crew shortly after Earthrise. There will be a short observation break period where the moon is not in view. That's because we are also anticipating the crew seeing an eclipse today. The moon won't be in view because the team here in Mission Control Houston will need to change the attitude of the spacecraft and ensure that its solar arrays are gathering light from the sun heading into that eclipse period. So we will have communication with the crew, we just won't be able to see the moon. However, we will have views during that eclipse time frame. During that time, the science team is looking to know, it will only be illuminated by Earthshine at that point, so they want to know what the whole moon looks like overall, but they also want the crew to look into deep space and potentially see if they can spot any planets. Once the eclipse is over, the lunar flyby period will have ended. We are live through the whole thing, and even once flyby is over today, we remain live 24/7 on NASA's YouTube.
Integrity, you got a moment?
Go ahead.
I don't know if Catherine and Devin are still there, but if they are, just wanted to just let them know how much fun we're having out here. It's extraordinary to be on the far side of the moon right now, just see it hanging out there and looking back at the Earth. And Ashley and Kaylin, I know you're back in Canada, but if you happen to be watching too, just wanted to say hi to all you guys, love you guys, and we'll be heading back your way shortly.
Thanks, Jeremy. I hear they are watching, and your family is still here. So thanks for passing that along.
This view inside the Orion spacecraft, and it's a little hard to make out, but on the left there, that is Jeremy Hansen just calling down some well wishes to his family, joining us in the viewing room and watching online. Currently in the window are Victor Glover and Christina Cook. They are taking pictures outside of the window as they are now in their flyby observation block. At this time, Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen are serving as support crew members, and they are also going to have an opportunity to enjoy their midday meal at this time. On the lunch menu today for Reed Wiseman and Jeremy Hansen, we have vegetarian chili, salmon croquettes, chicken with peanut sauce, sweet and savory kale, pickled beets, chocolate pudding, barbecued beef brisket, spaghetti and meat sauce, Italian vegetables, butternut squash, candy-coated chocolates, and maybe even a little bit of coffee. And if you look closely, you can see it looks like they are getting into some of their food for the midday meal. All of the food on the spacecraft is rehydratable. We don't have an option for fresh food as there's not a refrigerated section of the Orion spacecraft. So all of this food can either be rehydrated or eaten straight from the package, just depends on what the food actually is. And for food that needs to be rehydrated, there is information on each package of how much water needs to fill that bag and what temperature it needs to be. We are now 4 days, 23 hours, and 39 minutes, 40 minutes actually, into the flight of Artemis 2, the spacecraft now under 4,500 miles from the moon. We are now also under 30 minutes away from loss of signal with the astronauts. We will regain that communication about 40 minutes later. They will still be photographing the moon and documenting what they're seeing while they're behind the moon. And we especially look forward to potential Earthset and Earthrise views. As you can see on the left side of your screen, we are streaming this solar array camera view throughout the flyby. And the science team also plans to capture an occasional still photo with the solar array intermittently, perhaps one every 8 to 10 minutes. Still photos represent the highest resolution imagery from those GoPro cameras. So starting 5 minutes before Earthset and loss of signal, the science team will capture a series of photos, one every 30 seconds, to include Earthset all the way through 5 minutes after Earthrise and acquisition of signal. In order to capture these frequent photos, the solar array camera that we were streaming will need to switch to time-lapse photo mode. So during this time, the streaming video quality won't be as sharp as you have it right now, but we want to ensure that the science team captures the data that they need during these time frames. And we really look forward to seeing those higher resolution images once they're available. But with the view you are seeing right now, we are sharing bandwidth on the Orion spacecraft with every system that is keeping the spacecraft powered and the crew alive, especially the environmental control and life support system. As this is the first flight with crew, this is also the first flight of a life support system, keeping the crew healthy and safe on the way to the moon and the way home. On the timeline, we're getting towards the end of the cabin and window team swap period, but it looks like our astronauts, Victor Glover and Christina Cook, are already photographing the moon outside of those windows. The next target is Ohm Crater, and this is something that they have photographed previously during the flyby. This is a small complex crater with a prominent ray system. And as referenced earlier, it's the size of the Eye of the Sahara. That Eye of the Sahara is a feature in Mauritania. Seeing this crater more than once throughout the flyby allows the crew to photograph it at different lighting conditions. Those different lighting conditions help expose different portions of the target and can help the science team learn a little bit more about how it formed and what it is today. Again, this view inside the spacecraft as the crew continues photographing the moon outside their windows. They have turned the lights off to allow them to better get photos of the moon, preventing any reflections from coming in from the spacecraft. We expect the crew to be targeting Ohm Crater for another 6 minutes or so before they move into a discussion of the limb. Now, the science team has asked for a science sit rep or situation report during that time, so we hope to hear calls from the crew on what they are observing. If you've been following along, at the start of the day, we did have much more of the moon visible. And even just an hour or so ago, we could see about half of the moon. We are now continuing to see more of the far side and that darkness where the moon is not reflecting light from the sun. earlier, we were also able to see some of those darker portions, that old lava flow that we often see on the near side of the moon and that we can all see from Earth. That has mostly gone away. We are now just seeing very little of Orion Tall. That's down to the bottom right of the moon. You can see just a small dark portion near the limb. We are now about 18 minutes away from loss of signal with the Orion crew. Again, we use the Deep Space Network to communicate with the crew members when they are this far from Earth. This is the first mission since Apollo when we have had humans on the Deep Space Network. As you recently heard Capcom Jenny Gibbons call to the crew, we expect their closest approach to the moon to be at MET, or mission elapsed time, of 5 days, 25 minutes, and 34 seconds. At that time, their altitude would be 4,067 statute miles above the Earth's surface. Just over 2 minutes later, they will reach their maximum distance from Earth at mission elapsed time 5 minutes, 5 days, 27 minutes, and 39 seconds. The altitude at that time would be 252,756 statute miles. These are our latest numbers, and we'll make sure to verify and confirm those once those milestones have been achieved. Obviously, we will be without communication to the spacecraft at that time, so once we regain communication, we will make sure to find out those numbers and report those to you. Checking in on the lunar targeting package, the crew is now in their discussion of the limb. See, the limb of the moon, that illuminated part. Currently at the windows taking photos and making annotations are Victor Glover and Christina Cook. We are expecting loss of signal in about 13 minutes. We will regain that signal with the crew about 40 minutes later. A milestone worth mentioning that this day marks the first time in more than 50 years that humans will observe the moon directly, a critical opportunity to practice how lunar science will be conducted during future Artemis missions. I've continued to reference the lunar targeting package throughout this broadcast, which is the primary tool guiding the crew observations, and that consists of two key components. The first of those is the Lunar Geography Review, which helped the astronauts study major lunar features in advance. That also helped them learn to orient themselves during the flyby. The Lunar Targeting Plan provides a detailed timeline of observation targets, background science context, and specific instructions for the picture the crew should take, and verbal descriptions of what will be helpful to the science team reviewing those pictures later. That's what we've been tracking real time and what the crew is using right now to keep up with their next milestones.
Integrity Houston, 10 minutes till the LOS. We'll take a snappy sit rep from the cabin if you have one.
Okay, Jenny, that came, we missed most of that, but just a 10-minute warning, is that what you're saying?
10-minute warning for the LOS, and I'll take a quick sit rep from the cabin, please.
All right, cabin is still full of excitement. We've got Christina in window 2, Ike in Victor in window 3. Reed's actually been trying to get some images out of the docking tunnel. We can see the Earth and the Moon and part of the Moon out of the docking tunnel, which is pretty good. And I'm just grabbing some footage right now with our interior cameras.
Copy, Jeremy. We'd like to know what camera Reed is using and also the status of window 1. Looks like there might be a shroud removed.
Okay. Reed was using the Z9, and the T-shirt shroud is still on window 1, but we took the camera out of it. So maybe that's what you're noticing. But when I looked in there, I saw a lot of sunlight reflecting around.
Copy. That makes a lot of sense to us, Jeremy. I want to remind you, coming up on this LOS, that we'll take sit reps in the blind, and as more and more of the moon is in darkness, we will take any report you have on impact flashes.
All right, Jenny, you have to say again your last. There's a lot of conversation here, and I was on the other side of the cabin, so I missed all of it.
Look out for impact flashes, and we'll take sit reps in the blind.
Okay, impact flashes, sit reps in the blind. We got it. And yeah, just so you understand what's going on with window 1, there is light coming through the outer hall from window 2 into the inside of window 1, if that makes sense. Like, I can see the inside of the vehicle when I look between the two panes of glass.
Copy.
You're getting your first live look at Orion, the moon, and the Earth. Everyone in this picture. This is a live view from the Orion spacecraft. Currently aboard Orion, 4 crew members: Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. And on the Earth, all of us, all of humanity. You can see the moon is starting to get a little bit dimmer as the astronauts are going to pass behind it. Now 6 minutes and 26 seconds away from that loss of signal. Again, we will be out of communication with them for about 40 minutes until they come around the other side of the moon and we can re-establish contact.
Integrity Houston, you are 6 minutes from your 40-minute lunar flyby LOS. From all of us, it's a privilege to witness you carrying the fire past our farthest reach. Thank you. Godspeed.
Thank you for that, Jenny. And thank you to all of you for allowing us the immense privilege to be on this journey together. It's quite amazing. And as we go on this journey, thinking about the NASA mission to explore the unknown in air and space, to innovate for the benefit of humanity, and to inspire the world through discovery. And as you've gone along on this journey with us, hopefully we're doing just those things. And as we get close to the nearest point to the moon and farthest point from Earth, as we continue to unlock the mysteries of the cosmos, I would like to remind you of one of the most important mysteries there on Earth, and that's love. Christ said in response to what was the greatest command, that it was to love God with all that you are. And he also, being a great teacher, said the second is equal to it, and that is to love your neighbor as yourself. And so, as we prepare to go out of radio communication, we're still to feel your love from Earth, and to all of you down there on Earth and around Earth, we love you from the moon.
Houston copies. We'll see you on the other side.
We will see you on the other side.
poignant words from NASA astronaut Victor Glover, and a little bit of a love letter from the other side of the moon all the way to Earth. Glover touching on the teachings of Jesus, including to love your neighbor as yourself. We are now less than 3 minutes away from loss of signal with the Orion astronauts. The Artemis 2 crew will be out of signal for about 40 minutes as they are on the other side of the moon, continuing their work photographing the lunar surface, and they will reemerge, and we will also get this view on the other side. Just about a minute and a half now until we lose communication with the astronauts aboard Orion on the Artemis 2 mission. Now 5 days and 6 minutes since their launch on April 1st. Again, we'll be out of communication for about 40 minutes. And this really beautiful view of a crescent moon and a crescent Earth. How great thou art. "30 seconds now until we expect loss of signal. And we have confirmation of loss of signal of the Orion spacecraft as it flies behind the moon. We expect to regain communications with them in another approximately 40 minutes. This was expected as their spacecraft is now out of direct line of sight with Earth and behind the moon. And this is a poignant moment as it's the first time in over 50 years that we have humans completely unreachable by anyone else on Earth. No matter how distant or secluded, we could reach anyone living on Earth, but while the crew flies behind the moon, it's simply impossible to make contact with them. This is a live view inside the Science Evaluation Room here at Johnson Space Center and just down the hall from Mission Control. This team has been monitoring the flyby all day as the team has continued capturing targets on the lunar surface. We even got to see this team in action